Welcome to the Morning Scoop. I'm joined by longtime Ohio State insider Nevadabuck. Nevada, we have another big victory, 49-10, Ohio State over Rutgers. Initial thoughts on the weekend's performance by this Ohio State team?
Well, for anybody who's been following my game predictions, I actually predicted 49-10. So that's probably the first time in a really long time that I've got it exactly right. But I feel like I've had a pretty good handle on the Ohio State team this season, and I was fine. The game was. I think we got out of the game what we expected. It was a little bit of a come down after the Wisconsin game. You're getting ready to go on the road next week against Michigan State, and I felt like, offensively, it felt like Ryan Day was trying to force some things for C.J. Stroud, trying to get him that Heisman moment, maybe get him some touchdown passes when maybe a run was easier. But defensively, you're seeing him continue to take another step. And nice, tidy victory. I don't take anything for granted, especially when you see teams like Georgia go, struggle against Missouri or any one of the countless other teams that have been upset. So you can never be upset about a 39-point victory. The odds makers had the game right, and Nevadabuck had the game right. So I was pleased all the way around.
Yeah, both Vegas and Nevadabuck were really on point with that one. So I guess kind of starting with the offense, you mentioned probably not C.J. Stroud's best performance, but they certainly got it down. They got some points up on the board. So I guess with a letter grade, what kind of grade would you give the offense for this performance against Rutgers?
Well, it really varied. I thought CJ was really ordinary, and maybe give him for him maybe a C, because it just felt like he was just trying to force it, and he wasn't playing within kind of the context of the game. That interception was really ill advised. Didn't like the body language. Didn't just there nothing about the game looked smooth. The best thing about the game was that we won. Now we'd switch it around the other side, and the running game was fantastic. I mean, Mayan Williams, 189 yards on 21 carries, 70-yard bomb that he ran right up the gut and took it to the house. He's been playing at such a high level, and so from a running game standpoint, I'd give them an A. From a passing game standpoint, maybe a C plus, and for Stroud, I give him a C. So it was really a choppy effort all the way around. But you're going to have those. You can't always play at your best, and when you're playing choppy, when you're playing, a middle of the road type of performance, and you still win by 39 points, it just goes to show you how overwhelmingly talented Ohio State is. And the best part about the games like this is that we're still undefeated. Everything we want is still in front of us, and on to Michigan State.
Yeah, it was a great performance, and I think we actually talked about it on the live pregame show. We said get ready for Schiano to pull out all the trick plays, and there's the onside kick, and the halfback pass came pretty fast, and I think they were setting up for a few others as well. So yeah, I agree. You can't take any victory for granted. So it was a good win, but flipping over to the defense, a pretty strong performance. How would you? I guess what kind of grade would you give the defense after Saturday?
Well, I mean, I'd give them an A minus, and maybe that was being a little harsh, but I mean, Steel Chambers played unbelievably. I mean, he was so good. He was all over the field, making plays, just running to the ball. I thought, we're not getting the type of pass rush that we want. We got some turnovers. I'd mentioned in one of my columns this weekend, in my Uncomfortable Truths column, that I'm of the opinion that Zach Harrison is probably better as an interior defensive lineman. And I know that probably puts me in the minority, and maybe that's a crazy thought. But if you go back and look at when he's making plays, and that one interception was a tip pass, and you see Zach was right on the nose on that play, playing on the three technique. And he really presents some interesting challenges on the interior line with his length, with his strength, and he's so good against the run. Maybe he's better on the inside than having him out there at the defensive end. And maybe that's a wrinkle that you may see more of from Ohio State in the future. But, the defense continues to take steps. I think we're right around top 10 in defense in the country. And what a turnaround. Jim Knowles is a magician, and those guys deserve everything, all the accolades that they can get, because the transition of the Ohio State defense from 2021 to 2022 has been nothing short of miraculous. And, like I said, I tip my hat to him because it's been really fun to watch.
Yeah, and some of the players who were newcomers last year, I wouldn't say Steel Chambers looked totally confused last year, but he had 11 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss on Saturday. He's been a star this year. This whole defense has really turned around. So it's been pretty exciting and impressive what Jim Knowles has brought to the table. So I want to actually get into, so you had your column, 7 Uncomfortable Truths. So if you're not a member of Buckeye Scoop, I encourage you to join. Go to buckeyescoop.com. There's a lot of insider information. A lot of the content you get here, you'll actually get some early glimpses into it a few days earlier. So you had the 7 Uncomfortable Truths column, and you mentioned Zach Harrison. I thought he had a pretty good game, and it is an interesting thought putting him inside. But, kind of sticking on the defense, one of the other players that you talked about was Denzel Burke. Now, we've been talking about him for a few weeks, and, my personal opinion, I thought this was just going to be a kind of a short, one-time, sort of fall back into below average play, but it seems like he's continuing to struggle. So maybe you want to expand on kind of what you talked about in that column and your thoughts on Denzel Burke at this time.
Well, first of all, I hate piling on a kid, and and I'm not meaning to do that. So
Yeah.
none of these things that we say are an indictment of Denzel as a person, or none of this is personal. So I just want to make that really clear to the listeners that I'm not trying to go there with him, but right now he's just not good enough. And I think for Ohio State, they're better off playing some of the young guys, and I'd rather see J.K. Johnson, or I'd rather see just about anybody there right now than Denzel. And I think he's got a bad shoulder. He's clearly favoring it. And he's playing it at a level right now that's just not going to be sustainable for Ohio State if they want to be a national championship football team. I think he should take a few weeks off, try to get right physically, try to get right mentally, and then come back. And we've seen other guys do it. We've seen Josh Proctor got pulled unceremoniously after 4 plays against Notre Dame, and since then he has come back. He has been a wrecking ball, and I took a lot of grief after that, when he got pulled. People like, "Oh, Nevada, you said that Josh was going to be good." And I'm like, I'm telling you, this kid can play, and he's going to be a heck of a player. And I mean, he's just been nothing short of amazing. But I think Denzel needs to reset. They need to get him off the field. They need to give him a chance to kind of, get healthy, get right, and then come back and see if he can contribute. Because right now he's just not getting it done. And they say on offenses look to try to find the fish. Well, he's the fish right now, and Ohio State's got to get him off the field. And I think the Ohio State defense would be even better if they made that change and made that change a semi-permanent one.
Yeah, and it's funny because when we think about Denzel, we think of him now as like the older guy and like the J.K. Johnson or Jair Brown as these younger guys, but really Denzel is a younger guy too. He doesn't have 2 years of experience on J.K. Johnson, so it's probably not unexpected he'd run into some walls, and it's entirely possible that some of those other guys that were in his class or a bit younger have caught up with him. And yeah, I do think we saw a lot of flashes last year. Long term, he has a bright future, but it does seem like he's been in a bit of a struggle. So I guess with that, let's flip over to one of the positive. I'm not sure how uncomfortable this truth is, but Emeka Igbuka, what a start this year. He really has been fantastic, and especially with JSN out, obviously getting a little bit more attention from DBs, but hasn't seemed to slow him down. So thoughts on Igbuka's start to this year?
Well, I remember last year when Olave and Wilson were talking about JSN, and they was like, "Hey, JSN is going to be better than we are. Like, he's a better player than we are," and that was the highest of praise, because we've seen what Garrett Wilson and Chris. I watch those guys in the NFL now and watch them just turn NFL. They're amazing players. It's such a pleasure to watch those guys. I've known Chris for a long time, but I digress. But this year we're looking at Emeka, and it's like Emeka's this year's JSN, and Emeka may end up being the best one of the whole bunch. I mean, he is so smooth. He's so smart. He knows when to sit down. He knows when to go. He's one of the few guys that can get clear separation just about any time he's out in the field. And other than that muff punt, because they're playing him up, and he tends to catch those punts over his head. I mean, he was nearly flawless, and like I said, I just can't say enough good things about this kid. He's a hard worker. He's a kid that leads in the weight room, and he's a film room junkie, and just an outstanding player. And again, with Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, Emeka might end up being better than any of those guys, and that's that's just kind of stunning to even have that discussion. But Brian Hartline keeps bringing him in, and I think he's the next great one, as we all can see.
Yeah, and another positive note, you touched on it a little bit, but we can't do a Monday morning scoop without talking about Mayan Williams. And so, obviously, a little bit of debate is starting to pop up. There are a lot of people now starting to say that actually they think that Mayan might be a better running back than Trevian. I don't know who is the better running back, but all I know is that I love watching this guy because he will really bully you if you get in front of him. And he had that one play. It wasn't the big touchdown run, but where he got hit and he had that spin move and then he rolled out to the side. You could just hear the crowd roar because of his effort. So he had 21 carries, 189 yards, 5 touchdowns, tying a record there at Ohio State. Any thoughts on Mayan Williams? And I guess, are we taking the right approach by sort of kind of going back and forth on different series with these two running backs?
Well, I think that's the thing, and I think the uncomfortable truth is that we're probably hurting both of our running backs by splitting them, but that there really isn't a better solution because you've got two guys that are both NFL worthy, both record worthy at Ohio State, and you can't really sit one of them. But when one of them does sit for whatever reason, like Trevion was dinged up a little bit, they knew they didn't really need him,
Yeah.
as a 40-point favorite. So you want to sit him in that game. Well, I don't think it was any. It wasn't an accident that all of a sudden Mayan went off because he's getting the carries, and I feel it would be the same way if Mayan was out, and we saw a little bit of it the week before when Trevion could go a few more series in a row. Because what I think what happens is the running backs, when they know they're coming out after every series too, they start trying to do things that they wouldn't normally do. Maybe they try to cut things back a little bit more, or maybe they try to turn everything into a home run instead of just staying within the flow of the game and doing their thing. So as unfair as it is, I think Ohio State might be better off just picking one, but you really can't just pick one because you can't send Trey Henderson to the bench. But what can you say about Mayan Williams? So I think it's kind of an embarrassment of riches. I tend to think these things have a way of working out for the best and working themselves out. And I'm not wishing injury or anything else to fall on them. But in the terrible circumstances that something like that happened, we're in good hands because we've got somebody who's super capable of going in there and making things happen. And maybe it'll force the OSU offense. I've thought that a 2-back look for them would be devastating, a la the way that the Packers run, A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. I think the Ohio State should be looking at some 2-back looks because I think that would really confound defenses even further. And I think it's a way to get them both on the field, keep them happy, get some touches, and do some things. But no, Mayan Williams, what can you say? 5 touchdowns, 189 yards, even though I guess I always like these discussions where somebody's like, well, if you took out his 70-yard run, he only averaged 5.5 yards a carry. It's like, well, no, that's not how it works. You know what I'm saying?
No.
So
Yeah.
he was amazing, and what a player, and couldn't be happy for him. Could be a guy who's completely done it with desire and turning himself into a ball player that nobody else saw coming, but he never lost faith and always believed that he would be this good, and we're all seeing how good he is, and it's really a pleasure to watch.
Well, I mean, he really transformed his body entirely. Like, I think probably some of his stats, even for like the 40-yard dash and everything tied to his recruiting profile. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's completely off now, right? He looks like an entirely different person. And I think you make a good point when you think about the running backs. If you're going to only have a few carries, it sort of changes your calculus around risk reward, right? You think about bouncing something outside and you say, you know what, there's a high probability I'm going to lose 5 yards, but there's a small chance I might take this to the house, right? So you start going for that when you only have a few plays, but when you're going to be in there for a while, you tend to, build yourself into, I guess, a mentality where you're taking the appropriate approach every single time you're running the ball. So, all right, we of course have to mention this week's most talked about moment. We got past Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, fancy shoes and watch last week. So again, moving on to a non-football moment. Well, I guess it was football, but a moment between Ryan Day and Greg Schiano. So Jesse Mirko took a punt and ran out to the right, rugby style, totally open field, and then got clocked 2 yards out of bounds, and it proceeded to have a quite an interaction between Ryan Day and Greg Schiano. You've seen a lot of memes and his finger up in there already, getting after Greg Schiano. So I guess thoughts on that fire from Ryan Day. Was that something that made you happy, or were you more upset that maybe it was an appropriate move with such a big lead at that point in the game?
Well, I mean, let's just be factual about it,
Yeah,
okay? Ohio State's up big. Rutgers is attempting to block the punt. They're running a punt block in that
yeah,
situation. Mirko rolls out to the right, and there's nothing but green grass in front of him. It would be malpractice for him not to run and take the first down. He runs and takes the first down. Then the Rutgers guy hits him 2 yards. You're saying 2 yards. It might have been 3 yards out of bounds. It was late. The player's ejected. And then Schiano comes
all the
across
way
the
across.
field.
Yeah,
So it's like none of this thing. I don't blame Ohio State for any of it. I don't blame Ryan Day. I don't blame Jesse Mirko. I don't blame Ohio State. Ohio State did absolutely nothing wrong, and Rutgers did everything wrong. So, and that's not me being an Ohio State homer. That's just fact. There's not even another side to this discussion. So it's like, from my standpoint, I love seeing Ryan Day get up there. It's great that the guys can be chummy and hug it out before the games and stuff. But when the game starts, you know, it's competitive, and I think Ryan Day was sticking up for his players. I can tell you for a fact, I've heard from multiple players that they loved it. They loved the fact that Ryan Day showed that side, that he went out there and stuck up for them, because he doesn't do that often. He doesn't show that side of him. But boy, he's a competitive guy, and he was ready to go. And I love seeing it. The players love seeing it, and I saw nothing wrong with the play, and nothing. Schiano should. I understand what Schiano is doing. He's frustrated. They're down 6 touchdowns, and he's trying to make a big show for his guys too. But that was just embarrassing. They got their butts kicked, and don't try to block a punt and then expect the guy not to run it. So shame on you, Greg. And Ohio State. Ohio State didn't do anything wrong in that situation.
and it wasn't like we even called the play to the fake punt. It was an automatic read. It's when the ocean parts for you to sort of, go out and run with nothing but green grass in front of you. Of course, that's the automatic read you're going to take. So it was a fun, spirited moment, and it sounds like those guys. It was all amicable afterwards. They shook hands. They said nothing but respect for one another. But hey, it was nice to see Jesse Mirko. 6'4", 220 punter, has some I think some rugby background. Not bad to see him get out there and do that. That's something that maybe we have in our back pocket for a future game.
Yeah, well, those Australians. I mean, first of all, I don't know why anybody would ever go anywhere other than
Yeah.
Australia for kickers, because those guys. I mean, it's like the Dominican Republic for shortstops. I mean, there's unbelievable, and they're unbelievable athletes. And yeah, he can do it. And anytime he's going out there and there's not anybody out there, run, Jesse, every time. That was a great play. Love to see it.
Well, you can tell the players have his back. I mean, they were quick to surround him. I think Mitch Rossi really got in there quickly and said, even on social media, that's my punter. So that was good to see. And I think that it was a fun spirited moment, but I think everyone's moved on. And yeah, it is just a little bit sad for Rutgers coming off of that. So finally, we have Monday morning quarterback. So looking back, is there anything that you would want to improve? And then we have some breaking news that we also have to address quickly before we come to a close here. So Monday morning quarterback, any kind of improvement coming out of Saturday's game against Rutgers?
Yeah, I think Ryan. As good as Ryan Day was as a play caller against Wisconsin, I thought he was really pedestrian against Rutgers, and everything felt too contrived. It felt like they were forcing it. You know it when you see it, and I think Ohio State needs to stay within themselves, play within the offense. Don't try to get C.J. Stroud a Heisman moment, or let it just come naturally through the offense. So if we had to do it over again, that's certainly something that we'd like to correct, and I'm sure Paul Chris would like to have something correct, because he's been fired, and what they named Jim Leonard the interim head coach at Wisconsin.
Yep.
Something that was not. I'm not shocked by that, because Wisconsin boosters have been really unhappy with Chris as of late, and it looks like he's kind of lost the team. And I think they're really kind of, to make a move like that in season just shows you how bad it was, because he almost looked like he was stopped coaching. I mean, he wasn't even trying anymore, and that's a tough situation there. That's a premier job in the Big Ten. I'm sure Jim Leonard will do a good job, but he's inherited a very difficult circumstance right now, and I wish him the best, but he's got a big challenge ahead of him.
And pretty painful too lose your job after a game against Brett Bielema, who actually keeps his spot as I think the number 2 most winningest coach at Wisconsin. So pretty rough losing them. And who knows? I think maybe Brett's throwing his resume in there right now.
Yeah, Brett's a trip. Brett's got it going on, and I actually, if you take away the weirdness, and Brett's not a bad coach, but unfortunately, you just can't get past the weirdness.
Yeah. So, anyways, another great week of college football. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure, Nevadabuck, and a lot of great content coming on Buckeye Scoop this week. Be sure to subscribe and also to check out BuckeyeScoop.com, where you can find a lot of insider information and original content. Thank you again, and go Bucks.